Enterprise leaders are facing a structural collision. The current macroeconomic system is meeting the rise of high-speed autonomous agents, and the resulting friction is visible in every corner of the global market. Previous strategies for the Fourth Industrial Revolution, such as the push for stakeholder capitalism, have struggled to gain traction. These models relied on a moral plea, hoping to convince corporate boards to voluntarily adopt new values through social pressure. This forced a conflict between ethics and the strict legal fiduciary responsibilities those leaders are required to uphold. A system that requires leaders to break their legal mandates is a system designed to fail. Transitioning to the next era requires moving past moral pleas and looking toward thermodynamic physics. Aligning market behavior with biological and physical limits allows global prosperity to become the baseline for shareholder ROI, rather than a philanthropic sacrifice. For decades, the global economy has relied on a one-dimensional enterprise-out extraction model. Tools are built in centralized silos and pushed into the world. This mechanism relies on probabilistic guessing, hoping centralized engineers can accurately predict localized demand before the product leaves the factory. This push model is now being disrupted by four-dimensional technologies: millisecond AI, kinetic robotics, CRISPR, and 3D printing. Attempting to force high-velocity intelligence through these legacy pipes is mathematically unsustainable. The density of the data and the speed of the agents exhaust physical power grids. The result is a series of logistics bottlenecks and trillions of dollars trapped in static, depreciating infrastructure. This asynchronous collision generates a $96 trillion macro-systemic bleed across the global economy. This bleed continues as long as the C-suite operates under the assumption that the corporate enterprise is an omniscient master meant to push convergence onto the planet. To correct this, we must redefine algorithmic IP. It is not the brain of the world, it is a high-velocity capability. Treating algorithmic intelligence as a centralized push force creates the very thermodynamic friction that threatens to break the physical infrastructure required to sustain it. To recover this trapped capital, global markets must execute a kinetic decoupling. This shift is led by the apex pioneers, the institutions that govern foundational infrastructure. These gatekeepers control the 5 primary physical domains: compute, silicon, energy, logistics, and capital. For the system to scale, these institutions must safely shed their hoarded physical mass, moving capacity to the localized edge. By untethering their algorithmic IP, they prevent the thermodynamic disruption of the planetary grid, allowing capital velocity to increase without overheating the system. This moves the market from push to demand-out physics. Market gravity reverses, pulling borderless capability outward exclusively to resolve mathematically verified demand. Borderless machine intelligence cannot be unleashed globally without first establishing a physical and biological anchor to ground it. This anchor must exist at the legally defined local or regional level, operating within the specific boundaries of a state or province. This is the first half of the new architecture, the Modular Sovereign Coherence Orchestration, or MSCO layer. The MSCO acts as a temporal airlock, containing the messy reality of human debate and localized jurisdictional law. This containment ensures that localized frictions do not cascade upward to fracture the high-speed global network. Within this local jurisdiction, the population is no longer a collection of passive consumers. They form a social swarm. Through a unified certification model, this swarm defines an objective, high-dimensional deficit of capability that allow human agents to solve frictions that centralized engineers cannot perceive. This local agency recombines advanced technologies to natively mint new four-dimensional intellectual property. The biological counterparty transforms the local edge into a primary R&D engine, generating value from the specific needs of the community. To connect these local innovation hubs globally without triggering monopoly capture, we need a second layer. This is the Supranational Sovereign Coherence Orchestrator, or SSCO. Operating as the 4D counterparty, the SSCO serves as a global T0 clearinghouse. It takes zero custody of fiat currency, corporate IP, or raw consumer data, eradicating the massive high-risk data lakes of the 20th century. Instead, the SSCO custodies the planetary routing logic, translating human intent into automated policy as code. Recording only the mathematical patterns of coherence, rather than raw data points, drops corporate cyber liability to near zero levels. This creates a state of continuous dynamic equilibrium, routing kinetic capital to verified vacuums to sustain the baseline of life. The MSCO defines the demand, and the frictionless SSCO ensures that borderless capability arrives exactly where it is needed. This transition is geared toward crossing a World Bank-validated $1.152 quadrillion baseline of planetary wealth. The process begins when apex industry pioneers convene inside a zero-custody consortium to re-engineer their asynchronous trapped assets. This targets friction capital, the billions historically spent on marketing, customer acquisition, and trailing compliance in the old B2X era. Unchecked autonomous agents threaten to erase this friction capital in a vacuum, which would collapse the consumer base and destroy market stability. This architecture rescues that capital by containing those massive legacy expenses at the MSCO airlock. Because capability is pulled only to verified demand, these recovered expenses are converted into exponential network yield. By aligning production exclusively with pre-cleared demand, the system removes the waste of speculative investment, structurally de-risking the entire global supply chain. This fundamentally alters the landscape of mergers and acquisitions. The era of pursuing monopolistic global acquisitions is ending. The legacy M&A model is increasingly defined by multi-year integration friction and massive antitrust blockades. Capital now targets the innovative, localized 4D intellectual property minted at the MSCO level. Global gatekeepers can scale these localized innovations across the planet with vastly accelerated returns. This new kinetic ecosystem beautifully fuses the planetary substrate, sovereign law, and biological reality into a single functional machine. By empowering the localized workforce to lead innovation and using a frictionless counterparty to route that brilliance, we align global prosperity with the strict fiduciary duties of the world's gatekeepers. The machine economy is finally configured to serve the living.